first of all, maybe tell us a few words about your story and how you decided to open a brewery in the mountain with your wife. Because that's quite interesting.
Yeah, so, well, my wife and I started the brewery, and we actually met Brewing beer at my apartment one night a long time ago, I guess about 15 years ago now. So we met Brewing beer. I tested her from the beginning to see if we could wash bottles and do all that stuff, and we hit it off, and our whole relationship was kind of based on beer and going to breweries and trying new beers. And we were both in the Army, and we eventually got out and decided to live our dream and start a brewery, and we always loved going to the mountains, but we never were able to live in the mountains, so we basically used the brewery to move up into the mountains so we could go ski every day and go hike every day and brew beer. We wanted to create a brewery that brewed beer is kind of worthy of people's experiences in the mountains. Everyone goes there searching for something, and we wanted to give them a place where they could drink beers worthy of their experiences and come together and relive those at our place. And we started out actually making mostly Belgians, and then we made some IPAs, but the IPAs really took off, so then we started making more IPAs and more IPAs, and now we make everything. We make lagers, pilsners, stouts, fruited sour
because
beers.
People were asking for that kind of beer.
Or like Belgian breweries were an inspiration to us, so they focus on one thing, maybe brew a couple beers and brew them as best as they can, so that's how we focused. We only brewed 2 styles of beer for the first, I think, 2 years we opened, and not everybody liked that, especially in the U.S. where people want to come into a brewery and get every type of beer. In fact, one guy came up to the bar, Emily, my wife, was at the bar, and he said, "I want a Pilsner." And she said, "Well, we don't have any Pilsners." And he said, "Well, I'm a lager." "We don't have any lagers. We got Saison. It's got Pils and malt in it. Maybe you'll like that." And he got mad and he threw down the chair and he walked out. But that was the risk we took.
Generation, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But enough people liked it, and it allowed us to focus enough on those 2 styles, and I think it was the right decision.
And how do you define your beers? And the second question about that, does the altitude make an impact on brewing beers?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, you know, a lot of my inspiration for beer is Belgian beer, which is all about the yeast. And so when we first started, we only brewed IPAs and Belgian styles. We actually brewed beers that were yeast driven, even the IPAs, hazy IPAs. We try to get a lot of the tropical aromas from selecting the right yeast and treating it in a certain way to drive those esters in those beers. And I think that's really what defines our brewery. We're more yeast focused, even though it's clean yeast.
Does the altitude make an impact?
The only
or not?
Yeah,
I don't know.
The only thing that it affects is our boiling temperature.
Yes.
We boil at 91.5 Celsius, which is good for the hops. For these types of IPAs, makes you keep a lot of the aroma from the hops. You have to use a little bit more hops, but it results in a better beer, I think. So that's the only difference.
What would you say to those people who hate hazy IPAs and say they all taste the same? There are a few people, even in Belgium, that say that because, from my point of view, they don't know it and they taste a lot. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of variation in those beers, especially now. There's probably close to 10 different major types of yeast that people use just to make hazy IPAs, and everyone has a different ester profile. and they all really create different beers. Some of our beers, well, we appreciate that there are some hazy IPAs that have one note. So some of our beers we create, we dry hop even with old world hops. Tettnang, Golding, Hallertau, just to keep a different dimension to it, to change that up.
So for the 5th anniversary of your brewery, you decided to open a new brewery in the French Alps. Why there? I guess for the mountain, but why did you make that decision?
Yeah, we made it for a couple reasons. One, the first reason is that we've made a lot of trips to Europe over the past couple years, brewing beers, doing tap takeover events, and we've seen that the craft beer scene in Europe is really lively and vivacious, and we kind of saw that brewers think a lot differently about beer than we do in the U.S., and we kept just learning different ways of thinking every time we'd come here. And so a big motivation for us is to get exposed to different ideas, and so we can see what happens in the European market and learn from that, and see what happens in the American market and also learn from that, and just learn different ways to think about making beer. And then personally, I lived in Belgium, and I fell in love with beer here in Brussels, and I've always loved the European beer culture. It's always been inspiring to me, and so we wanted to come back and be a part of it.
And do you think brewing in Europe will affect your beers?
Yeah.
Maybe you will work with different ingredients and maybe local, or I don't know.
Already we brew with a lot of European malt, Belgian malt, Chateau, Franco-Belge malt, Thomas Fawcett malt from the UK, Environment malt. There's so much great malt here, probably most of it is here. I think being here will definitely affect our beers, and we want it to change how we think about beer.
So I've read actually that you were drinking Chimay Bleu at the age of 16. I had my share of Chimay Bleu because I was born and raised in the region. So yeah, that's what. So did you drink nowadays this kind of beer, Chimay Bleu, and how do you find it after all these years?
Well, I think my taste has changed, but to me, there's nothing better than having like a really fresh, amazing like Abbey style beer or an amazing saison. So my opinion about the style maybe has not changed, but I think my palate has improved since I was 16.
Hopefully.